My man! Welcome to the show. How are you? Really excited as a parent and as a person of color to have our guest today. Hey, what's up, everybody? Hey guys, what's up? It's Irfan. Hey guys, what's up? It's Irfan Jaffrey with the PhD podcast, which stands for Poor, Hungry, and Driven, which for me is a mindset and a philosophy of how you go and grow your business. My guest today, I am a huge fan of. Her name is Erin Vandemore. Erin, welcome. Erin has a business called Age of Uncertainty. And Erin, I'm not going to try and explain what you do. I would love to sort of first just have you introduce yourself and maybe share a little bit about the concept of your coaching business and why you started it.
Well, I'm Erin. I've been in the mental health field for, let's say, over 10 years, not to age myself. And I have found myself having to turn some people away, and that really sucks. And I hate having to do that because there's only so much space in the day and there's only so many people I can meet with. So I developed this coaching program that are courses so that if I say no to someone, I can say, but here's something you can do to help yourself, to begin the journey, to figure out where are those roadblocks? What am I doing that I need to stop doing, right? Okay. So that's where I kind of came up with it.
Got it. So you were booked pretty solid as a therapist,
yes.
And that's probably a testament.
I still am. I'm still turning people away every week, and I hate doing that. It's an awful feeling.
Got it. I think, in the time that I've known you, one of the things that I realized about you is that you've got just a huge emotional reservoir and fortitude that you draw on, because you get into some topics that can be, very difficult for a lot of people that are struggling, and so. As a result of being a busy therapist, but still wanting to help some of these folks that you just simply didn't have the bandwidth to help. Talk about what you started and sort of the structure of what you do.
Well, being in this field and working with people, being a mom and just a woman out there, I hear a lot of themes and I run into some issues that seem to repeat a lot. And so throughout my years, I've always taken little notes, like I'm hearing this a lot, or I hear this during this time of year, because I just notice all these things on repeat. And so that's what I started to kind of think about what to frame my courses around. And a lot of the things that I come up to is we get in our own ways. We get this self-sabotage process going where our subconscious kind of comes up and says, no, you're not allowed to have this level of happiness, or you're not allowed to feel this stable. And we'll find ways to self-sabotage and pull ourselves down. And I see that happening so much. So I really started to delve deep into that and create some courses around it. I also have expertise in a lot of trauma. And so I have the viewpoint of looking at people's roots. So where did this start? How did it start? What triggers it? What are some of those emotions that are coming up that maybe you're not always aware of? Because if we can have greater insight to ourselves, then we can help ourselves and then hopefully get out of our way.
Got it. Now, this isn't a cookie cutter process because everyone has different traumas or different triggers. How do you manage that? Do you have a process that goes about getting to the root of the matter with individuals?
So it's coming up with those core questions that everybody needs to answer. So I've always been told I'm good at asking questions because I'm always trying to get to the bottom of everything and peel back all those layers, which works really well in my profession. So I've developed a program that takes you through some of those questions to get at the root, to have a better understanding to yourself. So regardless of how different the circumstances may be, the questions are the same questions. The answers are what is different, but that doesn't mean I can't help someone, because I'm forcing you to reflect. I'm forcing you to ask those questions to yourself as we go through this process. And I make sure we always build upon things. So the emotions, the behaviors, the thoughts, the actions, because we're complex people. And so we need to make sure we have an understanding of how everything's interacting.
Got it. Do you focus on a particular profile for your clients, or anybody of any age, any gender can come to you, or do you tend to work with a specific group?
I generally work with young professionals, young adults, because we all get to a place or a point within our relationships or within our career where we either start to self-sabotage or we don't feel as challenged. And a lot of people during this time period have an opportunity. They can either feel uncomfortable and grow and keep moving forward, or they keep themselves stuck because it's scary to change. And so a lot of people will come my way when they start to hit these transitions in life. I do have a huge variety of people who I work with. I've worked with 10-year-olds all the way up to 80-year-olds, because trauma doesn't care what age you are, what gender you are, what ethnicity you are. It's just trauma. So I have a lot of different age groups, but with my coaching, my self-sabotage, that's generally like 30s, 40s.
Okay. The word trauma, I think, has some connotations to it that are heavy, right? When we think of the word trauma, at least myself, it conjures up, something more on the what I would deem to be extreme. How would you define trauma?
Trauma is just a biological process. So anytime your nervous system goes into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, and it gets overwhelmed, it sends these signals to your brain saying, oh, this is really important stuff, which is wonderful if you're a 3-year-old and you're about to run into traffic. You will always remember that and not run into traffic, right? It's a protection mechanism. It keeps us safe. It helps with survival. But our brain and our nervous system doesn't know the difference between, oh, that's traffic, we need to remember not to do that, and, oh, that person shot a gun across the street, I heard that sound, and now I'm terrified to go outside. Your brain and body can't tell the difference. And so it doesn't matter what the level of trauma is. We don't get to decide what trauma is. We can try and pretend that we can define, oh, that's trauma, that's not trauma. But if your nervous system went into shock, your nervous system says it's trauma. And there's no arguing with your body. So what's traumatic to a 3-year-old is very different to a 10-year-old, 20-year-old, a 40-year-old.
Okay. Would you also agree that trauma for two different human beings can be different?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. So for something for me that is second nature, I deal with a particular type of person on a daily basis, not a big deal, I'm fine with it, versus someone who's never necessarily been exposed to that, they might be like, oh my God, I can't believe that, he or she spoke in that tone with me. That was pretty traumatic. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Especially if when they were a young kid, they had a cranky old grandma or aunt who spoke to them and belittled them. And now they have this customer they ran into and they haven't interacted with anybody like that previously, except for that one person when they were little. It'll bring up all those emotions, right? And they may not even be aware of it.
Wow. That's heavy. So
it's incredible the stuff we hold on to when we're kids.
Yeah, and I feel like I feel myself turning red talking to you. 'Cause I'm thinking of all these things that immigrating from a different country and going through all
Oh,
the things that we
absolutely.
go through and just trying to file them away
Hmm.
in my brain. Let's talk about self-sabotage on a little
Hmm.
bit deeper level. Are there particular common things that you see in your practice and similar root causes?
Well, a lot of people, as we're growing up, and again, it's all back to childhood, sorry. And I'm a parent, so I know I screw my kids up. That's fine. I know good therapist I can send them to. So I'm saying with this grain of salt, it does not mean I'm saying your parents were bad. I'm just saying nobody gets out of childhood unscathed.
Oh,
So when we're young, it's kind of like we have a thermostat, right? This level is safe, and anything above this level isn't safe. And that's what we learn as kids, where the level is. Because we don't have critical thinking skills, we don't understand context or complex emotions. And so our little selves just try and keep an idea of what's safe or not when it comes to relationships, finances, career, right? And so what we're seeing is our family of origin. So if our family went through this big upheaval and dad got fired and was unemployed for 10 plus years, our thermostat for career is set kind of low because we know the shoe's going to drop. We don't want to get too happy up here because we know this isn't safe. So we'll sabotage and pull ourselves down. So everybody has a level within careers, finances, relationships, whatever it may be, where you have told yourself that this is safe and anything above's not safe. So it's figuring out for that person, where's the level? Where did you set that? So that we know when you're going to start self-sabotaging. And everybody has something.
really?
Hmm.
Um,
Everybody.
and then, look, so much of, we're all busy. Like, I'm a parent to a 3-year-old,
Mm-hmm.
working a lot, running a business, etc. Like most people, um, with demanding careers, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are some, and we're always looking for a quick fix, or like, something that we can incorporate quickly to fix whatever the ailment is. Um, what would you suggest to somebody who's like, gosh, you know what? I feel like every time I start getting ahead, I pull myself down. And the person that my friend group, this person passed me up, that person passed me up, and you start comparing
Mm-hmm.
yourself to other people, which I think is in part is natural. But what are some things to help combat that?
Well, first, I would say nobody really needs to be fixed. We all need to just heal and grow. That's just my perception.
Understood.
And I would also say there is nothing super quick because we as humans, we don't like change. So if you do a quick change, it's not going to last. That's why all these like fad diets don't last, and people who do like New Year's resolutions never really last, because we as humans, we like things like homeostasis, right? We like it the same. So anytime we introduce huge big change into our lives, we will sabotage that because we don't like it as humans. So if you really want to make some positive change, it has to be small and something you can repeat over time and build upon. That's how you're going to be most successful. One easy way to start that, though, that I have a lot of clients that I work with do, is anything to get out of your head and more into your body and senses.
Okay.
So anything you can do to notice the temperature of the air, or can you notice a bird in nature? To get out of your head and notice one of your senses. That can help.
So it could be something as simple as taking a walk in the morning.
Absolutely. It does not have to be a big, huge change. It can be very
Okay.
small things that you can build into your everyday.
And that what that does is that breaks up the homeostasis. And then am I right in my conjecture that you can then start layering on more changes incrementally and ultimately
Yes.
turn them into habits so that you can have more consistent positive habits that ultimately change your lifestyle for the better, right?
Yes, absolutely. You can
Okay.
have a big change, but it has to be over a period of time where you're able to develop that new pattern, that new habit. This is why journaling is so important, in my opinion, because if you start to journal, you can see your progress in a month, 6 months, a year, and be able to look back and see the small changes and how they just kind of kept going and rolling forward.
Got it. Now, with what you do, it's so interesting because everything is tailored to each individual. So, am I correct in my thinking that it's difficult to say to somebody, well, look, within 6 months, I'm going to get you to here, or within 12 months, I'm going to get you to here? How do you set expectations for progress?
It depends on what we're working on. If we're working with trauma, then I really have to make sure the person knows that this could take anywhere from 6 months to a year. It just depends on the level of trauma and also, honestly, the age, because the older we get, the more we make connections. So if you went through a traumatic experience last week, it'd be a much shorter period for us to move through that, right? Because you've only had a week compared to you went through trauma 20 years ago. And so now we have 20 years of you being triggered and all these connections being made in your brain. So that's one thing to kind of take into account. When we're talking about self-sabotage, again, we're talking about things from childhood. But that doesn't mean it's going to take a decade. It just means you need to be patient with yourself and honest. You know, this is not like a one and done thing. This, like everything, is a muscle. You have to keep exercising it. The moment you stop, it's not as good, right? It's not as strong. So it's more of a daily practice you want to do.
Okay. Of the clients that you've had that have had obstacles in healing, what would you say are the most common causes? Is it lack of patience and outsized expectations, or what do they tend to cluster into?
Generally, I can get my clients to some type of point where they feel better, they feel relief. Now, every now and then I'll run into a client who they're like, I'm good, but I would like this better, or I'd like to feel better in this area. And then we have an honest discussion. Is this something in my area of expertise, or is this something else? And lately I've been running into where, okay, we are aware of the self-sabotage, we're aware of the roots, and we've worked through that. They've put into a daily practice of being more in their body. They're able to call out the negative thinking. They're moving forward in a good way. And now this attachment piece coming up where they're not quite trusting other people in their lives. And so every now and then I'll run into attachment. And then I refer them to someone who I know who does attachment work. It doesn't happen too often. But if it does, then, I'll help you find someone who can keep you going. That's not an issue. It's about helping the person.
Got it. Interesting. I'd like to shift gears a little bit because I think to be able to do what you do effectively and be as good at it as I know you to be requires a certain mindset, a certain level of patience, a certain level of emotional reservoir or empathy, which is not really suited for everybody. Can you talk a little bit about your journey personally and what led you to see this as your calling?
Many different things, honestly. There's like different points throughout my life. One of the reasons I really started to dive into self-sabotage was when I went through what's called preeclampsia with my son. He was born premature because I had really high blood pressure and I was hospitalized during my 7th month. I argued with the doctors. I didn't want him to come early. After he was born, I went through this period of just being disappointed with my body, angry with my body. Why couldn't you do what you're supposed to do, right? And a lot of people will have moments where they've injured themselves or something happens physically with their health, and they start not to trust their body and they start to sabotage themselves because they're not happy with themselves. I'm a therapist, I'm a coach. It took me years to recognize what I was doing to myself. And so that's why it's so important to me to put this information out there so that people can just be happier, because why would you want to go through life beating yourself up for something you have no control over?
Wow. Interesting. And I think we all do that to a degree, right?
Oh, we do. There's always little moments in our lives. And that's what I call those roots, right? So the root of my self-sabotage was the premature birth of my son. Now, my son is the tallest in the class. He's in advanced school. He's doing great. And yet I was beating myself up. Makes no sense. But for whatever reason, when all that happened and my nervous system went into fight, flight, or freeze, I coded that as trauma. And then I blamed my body for not performing the way it should.
Wow. Can I ask how old your son is now?
He's 11. He's turning 12 in January.
Wow. Congrats.
Thank you.
Wow,
and
really,
he's
really
already
cool.
my height. Everybody thinks he's in high school.
Oh my gosh. That's
They
awesome.
would never known he was 3 pounds when he was born.
3 pounds. How premature was he born?
He was 30 weeks.
30 weeks. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. And so that led you to focus more on this specialty that you're now focused on.
Yes,
Okay.
because his birthday would come up and I would start to get cranky and I'd have a rise of anxiety. I'd want to control things. It just wasn't me. And I knew something was happening, but I knew that I wouldn't be able to just figure it out by myself. So I went out and got help and support and started researching and learning more.
Wow. Okay. To somebody who might be just on that journey of self-discovery where they're wanting to get help, but they don't know necessarily what the right first step is, because it could be overwhelming. Not only that, but I think in some cultures, the idea of therapy, the connotation of therapy is loaded, right, with negative connotation.
Oh, absolutely. It's, why aren't you strong enough or you have enough willpower, right? We have this idea that somehow it's a weakness. But if you had a toothache, you would just go see a dentist and you wouldn't call the person weak for their tooth.
Right.
I don't see why we do that with mental health. So a good first place would be, some self-help books, some online courses, so that you can do it privately and figure out what speaks to you first. If you start to feel more comfortable, you can absolutely reach out to a coach, a mental health therapist. But there's nothing wrong with starting, slowly through either online or a book, some way to start kind of checking in with yourself and asking yourself some questions.
Got it. If somebody wanted to learn more about you, to see if they would be a good fit to work with you, what would you suggest? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Well, I'm a very busy mom of 2. And so my website's always the best way, because it takes, I'm just going to be honest, it takes forever for me to call people back. But a quick email while I'm at somebody's softball game is much easier for me. So I have a website, ageofuncertaintycoaching.com. And so you can just go on the website and get all my contact information. I just thought, it's a weird age and things are so uncertain right now that it just kind of like fit what was going on. So
when you launched your
that's
practice,
what I went with.
Cool. Let's see. If you had 3 tips for somebody to, get past trauma or, start sort of healing, what would they be? That anybody can do starting today without necessarily saying, okay, I'm going to go and check with my insurance company and see if Erin is covered.
And jump through all the hoops. And
yeah, exactly.
Some type of journaling.
Okay.
Either talking to your phone and emailing yourself or physically writing or typing. You cannot make sense of everything if it's just in your head. You have to get it out of your head so that you can put light on it and make more sense of it.
Got it.
So I would start there.
Okay.
A second step would be being more in your body and less in your head. So anything that you can do to figure out what sense it is that speaks to you. Some people, it's having a weighted blanket, so it's sensory. Other people, it's tensing and relaxing their muscles to get them back in their body. For some people, it's listening to a bird or some type of animal that will get them out of their head. But it's figuring out what sense snaps you out of your head. That would definitely be my second. And then I would start looking at the trauma that happened. What is the narrative moving forward that you want to be able to tell yourself? A lot of times when we think about these nasty roots or trauma, or sometimes they're one and the same, we get this narrative of what we define ourselves as, how we tell ourselves the story happened, how it's impacted us, who we are. And we get stuck in this story, this narrative of ourselves. So what is it that you want the new narrative to be? How do you want it to look different? How do you want to be able to feel about it? What does this future self look like? Because if we have a better idea of what we're working towards and we're really specific about it, we'll be way more successful.
Can you give me an example of what you mean? Like take me, for example, actually, maybe that's a bad idea. What you want your future self to stand for and be like, and their characteristics and their personality?
I'll use mine with my preeclampsia because I went and got help and support. So I worked through it. So I'm not triggered anymore and I can talk about it without crying. So my old narrative is that I failed my son. My body wasn't as healthy. I didn't take good care of myself when I was pregnant. It's all my fault, right? Totally beating myself up because I already had a daughter and I had a fine pregnancy with her. So why couldn't I do it for him? So my narrative is that it was my fault, right?
Got it.
So thinking forward, the new narrative I needed to address was, did I really have all this power and control? No. How did I want to talk about myself in the future? What were other things I could say about myself, right? So, yes, I got preeclampsia, and my body didn't do what I wanted to do, but it was strong enough to make sure my son was okay. So it's adding on to the narrative to make it more complete and add positive to it.
Mm-hmm.
How do I want to feel when I talk about the preeclampsia in the future? I want to start to feel empowered. I don't want to feel sad or guilt. I want to feel empowered to tell other women to have these conversations, right? So what is it in the future I want to be able to see myself doing and talking and handling the situation when the past is brought up?
Got it.
Does that help?
It absolutely does help.
Okay.
On that note, this is completely a question out of left field, so, but something that you said made me think of it. there has been a massive, so you were talking about sensory and what we need, to feel good sensory wise. There has been a massive surge over the past, I would say, 5-7 years with, are you familiar with ASMR on YouTube?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Okay.
My daughter loves it.
Okay. Can you talk about that a little bit for people who might, A, not know necessarily what it is, and number two, the empirical therapeutic benefits of it, if they exist, or to the.
Well, I haven't done the research, so
Okay.
I can't say for sure. And when I don't know for sure, I just say it. But anything that can help you get out of your head and into your senses is always a benefit. There is no doubt about that. And there's a lot of research and science behind that. And with ASMR, you are hearing these sounds. Like my daughter's one friend will actually send funny videos of her like ripping up paper and different things over and over again to each other. So they get the sound over and over. It stops you from your thoughts, right? It gets you into just listening. It gets you out of your head. And if you're a negative thinker, you really need to get out of your head and into your body more.
Got it. Fascinating.
So those types of things is like a shock to the system that gets you out of your head quick. And that's always a benefit.
Wonderful. But ultimately, you do have to deal with those negative thoughts, right? Or how does that work?
Absolutely, you do need to deal with those negative thoughts. Where are they coming from? You really need to say them out loud. It is incredible the power that we give our thoughts in our head. But the moment we start to say them out loud, it takes the power away. And it also kind of shocks us into realizing how negative we really are. If you won't say that, what you're saying to yourself in your head, to another person or an animal, then why are you saying it to yourself? But until you actually say it out loud, you don't catch it.
Gosh. Wicked. Gosh. It's always so much. I could probably talk to you at length. I should probably book some sessions with you.
I love these conversations. This is what I do.
I think so many more people need to be exposed to you and your work. I think this is just what we've covered here is probably a snippet. We could probably do a multi-part series. But this has been really eye-opening for me. So I'll just restate, anybody who needs to get in touch with Erin, the website is ageofuncertainty.com.
Age of Uncertainty Coaching.com.
I'm sorry, age of, so
no, it's
anybody
fine.
who needs to get
it's long.
Connected with Erin, it is ageofuncertaintycoaching.com. Again, in all my interactions, the short time that I've known her, her vibe, her energy, it's, she's somebody that is very easy to open up to. She's very easy to trust. And I think, if you're busy and you're a professional and you're running around doing different things, we're into our head so much that it's nice to be able to talk to somebody and just know that they're there to help you be your best. And I think at the end of the day, removing some of those negative connotations around therapy and, focusing on your self-care and well-being from somebody who has the experience and the credentials and is certified and went to school for this is something that I think is beneficial for everybody to look into. So Erin, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to chat with you. Okay.
Oh, thank you.
All right, cool guys.
I appreciate it.
Awesome. All right, guys, have a good one. This is Irfan signing off.